Hey, podcast listeners, welcome to What You Reading, the podcast where I connect with fellow book enthusiasts to chat about our latest reads, the topics that fuel our bookish obsession, and all those things that keep us glued to those pages. Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to give you a quick heads up that there is a little bit of static feedback throughout this episode. I tried my best to reduce as much of the noise and editing as I could. However, these first couple of minutes, you might hear a little bit of static noise and as well as random parts throughout the episode. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. It's me, not you. However, I do think you'll really enjoy my discussion with Tori today. We're talking about creating TBR lists and reading from those monthly. I find it really interesting as a mood reader myself when people can create these TBR lists and they actually stick to them. So I invited Tori into the episode today to pick her brain about this process, how she feels like it's working for her. Is it working? Does she feel any pressure monthly to complete these lists? Because she also puts out a wonderful monthly newsletter where she is giving her subscribers a heads up in terms of what the theme of the month is, what books she's going to be reading from, and she also includes a bookish themed playlist in those newsletters as well. So that's what you've got coming up in this wonderful episode today. All right, let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. I'm so excited to have you guys back again with us today. We are jumping right into the conversation. I'm going to introduce you to our guests. We are talking to Tori from Read and Noted. Guys, if you're not following, please click the link in the show note. Go on over and follow. I love the roundups, the TBRs that you do, but also the newsletter that has like all of the book inspired playlists, and it's great. So we're going to be talking about all of those things today, what inspired you, how you come up with the music playlist and everything. But before we get into all of that, we're going to kind of let our listeners get to know you a little bit more. So first up, just go ahead and say hello to the people.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, JJ. As you said, my name is Tori, and I started Read and Noted first as a newsletter last year. So it is like my love letter to both literature and music. So as you mentioned, I have monthly book lists that I pair also with monthly playlists that just go against different themes and just kind of explore my love for both mediums in this nice little literary musical space.
Yes, it's great. I love it. And I don't know, like, I feel very, and you can tell me like if this is intentional, but I feel like it's very, I don't know, 90s R&B movie vibe. Like that, like not necessarily that they're always R&B songs from the 90s, but I feel like your playlists make me feel like I am in Love Jones or like Crook, you know what I mean? Like any of those like Poetic Justice 90s movies. Like, is that intentional or did it just kind of, that's just your vibe?
You know, it's not intentional, but I can see that. I so like all of my playlists, all of my book lists, like adhere to a certain theme, and I just think of like whatever music comes to mind. Whether it's like last month I did it's about like moral dilemmas. I can't think of exactly how I phrased it, but I was just thinking of like what are the music and like when I think of like songwriters or rappers like stuck in this like morally gray area, like what pops in my head, and I think of like Jay-Z's 90s albums and like Mariah Carey going through something. So I feel like that's where I kind of just like live musically, but my ear is always to the streets when it comes to music, so you'll get a little bit of everything in
Yeah.
this playlist.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, so if you want, you kind of told us a little bit more about that, the inspiration behind it. Behind like the overall. Tell us a little bit more on the reading side. Have you always been a reader? Are you getting back into reading? What's that kind of like process been like?
Yeah, so I am from a family of educators. My mom has always worked in the school. She's a behavior specialist. My grandma was like the director of like the math and science center where I grew up. And so I just come from like a lot of people who like were always in school, which means that there were always books brought home. So before I was even in school, my mom would bring back like over the summer like different book kits, thinking of like one of like a hooked on phonics type of thing. So I was just always reading as like a pastime. I would also like write my own stories when I was younger. And so I've always have leaned into like English and literature. And even though I just said that my grandma was like the director of the Math and Science Center, I've always math and science has never been my ministry. So I've always been into books.
Right.
The only time I really took like a long period away from reading would have been college
Mm-hmm.
because who has the time for leisure reading for real.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can remember like even now, like what got me back into reading post graduation. I remember my cousin lent me her Gone Girl copy. And
Mm.
I had seen the movie already, but like reading that like just jump started it all over again. So I like went through a phase of like only wanting to read thrillers, and then I've always been like really big into historical fiction. So yeah, ever since like a year after I graduated college, I've been back at it.
Just back at it. Okay, so I have to ask. I get, since you saw the movie and then you read the book, so you liked Gone Girl.
I loved the movie when it came out.
Okay.
But then I read the book and I was like, this is even better the movie. So I'm a Gone Girl fan on both ends. I
Okay.
typically have issues with adaptations, but I'll allow that one.
You liked both of them. Okay. I mistakenly saw like part of the movie, and I think it was like the middle to end of it, and I think that kind of maybe it ruined it for me, because then I was like, well, let me go back and like see what this is about and try and read the book. And like I think I got a couple of pages into the book and I was like, yeah, no, this isn't for me. And so I just never finished. And I've heard so many like polarizing or like differing opinions. Like there are people who are like, oh my gosh, I love Gone Girl, or you hated it. Like I very rarely see people be like, oh, it was, it was all right.
Yeah. I had a conversation recently also about like picking up books at certain like different times in your reading journey.
Mm,
So like I feel like it maybe made a difference. That was like the first book that like I read after taking a period off reading, because like it's suspenseful and you're kind of like solving this crime with
yeah.
like two very morally great characters. And so it would be interesting to see how I felt about it now. 'Cause like another example is like I just tried to read 7 Days in June that everyone loves, and I did not like that
It's
book.
not
But
for you?
I'm looking at it right now on one of my shelves, and I had to about either halfway or one fourth. I said I'm gonna try this a different time. But I told my friend to read it when she was trying to get back into reading, and she loved it. So I was like, I don't know if it's because I've been reading a lot of like more serious, I guess. Also, I'm not like a big like romance reader either. So
Ah.
we have a couple different things going on. But I put that book down, and it isn't one of my newsletters, but
Oh
I put
my
it down.
gosh. Oh, we'll have to have a whole separate conversation on that. And I've heard people say like, I don't get the hype of this book, or like I loved her new one. And I know people were like, oh, this is so slow. It didn't work for me. And I loved it. I think you're right with time, because it's different. It doesn't follow necessarily a lot of the normal romance patterns, or kind of like, I don't know, the way that all of the other ones do. Um, that's so interesting though. And I mean, I'm not gonna convince you to try again, or any of that. But that's definitely interesting.
But I love like Kennedy Ryan, so it's like I'm not really in this romance space, but I loved Before I Let Go. I loved whatever the last one was.
This Could Be Us.
This Could Be Us. Love that book.
Yeah.
But yeah, 7 Days in June did not do it for me.
Yeah,
So
that's
we'll
so
see.
interesting. Because This Could Be Us was honestly, and I was fine with it, but I remember like I read an arc, and I remember reading it and being like 70% in and being like, when are we gonna like actually be in a relationship? But I was fine. I was fine because I
Oh,
loved,
what did I
yeah, I
do?
loved the character. I loved the journey.
Yeah, it was definitely a journey. But yeah, when it was all said and done, I was like, okay, maybe I can like step my foot a little bit more into this romance territory.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, summer hits and summer misses. It's it is. romance has my heart, but so kind of going into that, are you like a heavy audio? Are you strictly physical, Kindle? Does it depend on the season? What's kind of like your favorite?
Unfortunately, I'm mainly physical, and I say unfortunately because it hits my pockets. I'm somebody that like is really trying to build like a little personal library, and
Okay.
very expensive. And
Yeah.
I like physically turning pages. I'm just really big on tangible art in general. Like you can't really see it in my frame right now, but like my record collection is behind me. I also collect like I have art all on the walls in my apartment. I collect like art figures. So I am very just big on like being able to hold and touch the different like art that I consume. And so physical copies of books are always just going to be like my preference. However, because I am putting out these reading lists and I'm trying to consume like just more books on a monthly basis, I have added in audiobooks to my routine. So, well, I've been trying to. I've been trying to carve out the space on when I'm listening to these audiobooks because like I'm also a person that like you can be talking to me and my brain is somewhere else. So these audiobooks can be playing and I'm like, wait, I just missed the past two chapters. So I've been trying to like incorporate audiobooks into like, walking and like morning cardio and stuff like that. But physical is always going to do it for me. Yeah, and Kindle, like I don't like reading on screens. It hurts my eyes. So
Got it. No, that makes total sense. And yeah, I agree. I was just talking to someone the other day. I was trying to listen to a fantasy on audio, and I told them like I was on chapter 4 and I was like, what's even happening? Like I gotta start this whole thing over. Like I've zoned out for a whole first 4 chapters. I don't know why we're here. Yeah, this isn't gonna work.
Yep. Although I will say, have you read the book, The City We Became?
Oh my gosh, yes.
That audiobook was so good. I have the physical copy and the audiobook, and I go back and forth, but I was like, I almost prefer listening to the audiobook because the cast was just
The audio
amazing.
did it. I tried so hard to read. It wasn't necessarily 2020 COVID, but it was like still lockdown era. It may have been like 2021. And I tried so hard to read that on Kindle, and I was just like, what? I'm so confused. And so I started it on audio, and yeah, that the narrator took it up a notch. Like it was, I could feel her voice, her emotion. I agree. That one was so good.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
now I like personally have issues with the Long Island, Rhode Island, whatever.
Oh, the Rhode Island. Yeah.
Yes. Like I feel like the hatred coming through this book. Now I have a vendetta against Rhode Island.
Yes. Agreed. Okay, and then if you want to tell us a little bit more about like what was your last read and maybe something that you're currently working on now, and if you enjoyed it, if it was just okay.
Yeah, so my last read was When Crack Was King, which phenomenal. I'm actually a journalism major. I'm not a practicing journalist now, but I've always really loved books that were written by journalists. Like I love memoirs that are written by journalists, and then nonfiction where you can really tell like investigative journalism took place. Those are like probably like top three of like my favorite things to read. And so When Crack Was King was just written so well. It's part like, character study, but then also we have like the real like breakdown and like just context of that epidemic that I feel like, as black people of color, like we kind of like speculate and like know from our own experience what that was like, but like that added layer of like real journalism just like really did it for me. I think that was just like a phenomenal book. And it's probably too early to tell, but it might be my favorite read of the year. It's definitely gonna be in the top three, I can tell. I really enjoyed that. So that was my last read. And I just remembered what last month's theme was. It was malfunctioning moral compasses. So that fell into that theme of like corruption and, whatnot. So love that book. And now that we're in May, I will give you the exclusive because the newsletter is coming out this week. It's not out yet, but I decided to focus on Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And so all of my books are from that community. and are focusing on kind of like a theme of like, are we destined or are we made? Because when I was doing like, looking into what books I wanted to read from that, like under that, from that community, a lot of those stories are like, multi-generational, like, exploring family dynamics or different political things. And so yeah, so I have like The Memory Police on there. I have Real Americans, which is a new book that came from. I'm blanking on the author right now, but she also wrote Good Vitamins, which I read last year. So I'm excited to dive in.
Nice. I love like you also one thing with your newsletter, like you also introduced to a lot of new books, new works, new authors. To me personally, it feels like it leans a little bit more literary heavy.
Hmm.
And I am not a great literary reader, so I love seeing that. And if I can, I know you've probably already got your list, but if you can fit it in, Biting the Hand by Julia Lee. It is like her memoir, and it is about, literally on the front of it, it says growing up Asian in a black and white America. And it's her experience of like, where do I fit in? Where do we as people fit in? And there are some very interesting concepts that she talks about: trauma, her parents, escape from North Korea to America, and what that whole situation looked like. And honestly, it's full of rage, it's full of anger, and I loved it. And she says in the beginning that she went that direction because as an Asian female growing up, she was always told, to be quiet, to be meek, to
Hmm.
to not speak too loudly, to present in a certain way. And it made she was a very angry teenager, but she had to hold it in. And
Yeah.
it was such a great book. So if you have room to fit one in, I would highly, highly recommend that one. And Tyler was actually a student in one of her classes at UNLV in Las Vegas.
Oh,
So yeah,
nice.
yeah. She's the one who
Yeah, I'll
introduced me to
definitely
it.
have to add that. Yeah, add that to my list.
Yes.
That community is so vast,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to make sure that I had like some, like South Asian representation, Southeast Asian representation. Um, this particular list unfortunately doesn't have like Hawaiian representation and whatnot. There's just so many books that you could read, but
Right.
I really am just like interested in like, as much as I can, being able to like amplify like, black and brown marginalized voices. And I realize that this is a community that like literature wise I haven't really dabbled too much in.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mentioned, I read Goodbye Vitamin, I read last year. There's also a really good memoir, Making a Scene by Constance Wu, I really liked. It's like an essay collection, which I also realized I really like essay collections. But yeah, I haven't read like a lot from like the Southeast Asian community or just like the spread of like identities that are in that community. So I wanted to be a little bit more intentional about using my platform for them this month. Yeah, so the list will come out this week. Super excited. And yeah, I will. I'm slacking on my reviews right now, but I will read and review these books.
No, I totally get it and totally understand. So kind of, along that same vein, I'm sure you have like tons of things to pick from when you're reading. Actually, hold on, let me back up. Crack was King was amazing. I agree with you there. It was totally phenomenal, and I was shocked because I was expecting it to be really textbook heavy, like,
Hmm.
I was just I was prepared for it to be overwhelming in terms of information, but I like how he used the information, the data, and coupled it with these
Yep.
individual stories. And I think it's the stories of it that was more impactful for me, because as I'm listening, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this person, where is this gonna go? Like, I don't want what I think is gonna happen to happen. It was phenomenal. So I had to echo.
Yeah. No, I was
Yeah.
like, this is a master class in
Yeah.
like journalism, a master class in like character studies. Like, it really, because I believe, I can't remember if I read this like in an article about the book or in the book itself, but like that epidemic is like the least studied, the least like reported on. I mean, from a like reflecting on, I guess, standpoint
Mm-hmm.
of all of the epidemics that have ever happened in the US, but it affected so many people, so many
Right.
black and brown people. And I feel like a lot of what has been written has dehumanized like the communities that were affected. So he did like a great job of like interweaving those stories and also just making it like very digestible. Like it's a
Yeah.
lot of information in that book, but it didn't feel like, some books you like really need a few months to really get through
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's so heavy. But this was written and like broken down in a way that like you can sit with, and you do need to take a break because there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
information that like can fill you with rage in that book. But
Mm-hmm.
he just did a really good job at packaging it together, I think. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
kudos to Donovan Ramsey.
Yes, I agree. Great, great book. Okay, so back to my question where I was going. You have a lot of stuff to choose from, I'm sure, as you're, putting out your monthly newsletters, and one of the things that really interests me is your TBRs. I don't know if you're a mood reader, if you're great at planned reading, or if you just pick out a couple of books that you should be able to fit in within the month, and then you kind of, let your mood take you somewhere else. How are you picking these monthly, like, how do you decide, like, okay, I'm going to read this, and this?
Yeah, so before Read and Noted, I used to do a thing that I actually got from like my high school AP Lang teacher. And she always said like read a book for enlightenment, then read a book for like enrichment. And enrichment being more so like fun, like what feeds your soul sort of thing. So I used to always go back and forth from like a fiction read that I really wanted to read and then something that was like gonna like heighten my awareness of something. Or honestly, I typically like read just like a bunch of memoirs because that was my favorite way to kind of feel like, I don't know, learning from people. But with Read and Noted, I actually plan out each month at the top of the year, so I already know what I know what themes I'm gonna read for the rest of 2024. My book list aren't necessarily solidified, but I look at so I keep a running list of like things that I want to read, whether I'm seeing things on, Instagram that seem really interesting or authors that I've been keeping tabs on, knowing that they have a book coming out. But I like compile this long list, and then at the top of the year, I like look at that list and like pick out the themes. Or I think of themes of like, different spaces where I want to read more on. So like, for a PI month, for instance. Like, I know I wanted to read more books from that community. I know that May is their Heritage Month. Let me make sure that I like am intentional about like taking space for that month. But also like um, with the like malfunctioning moral compasses, I actually got that idea because I was reading an S.A. Cosby book where he has morally great characters all the time, and that phrase was actually like in one of his books, and I was like, oh, I like the way that sounds, and I jotted it down. So I just slotted that in for a month. But yeah, I just kind of just think of what interests me, kind of based, yeah, one in part of like what I already kind of have on this like running TBR, but then also like what I want to be more informed on or want to engage more with. And also what I would like to amplify. Because, like, part of Read and Noted, I think, one is like meeting people where they are as far as like their journey with literature and music. And, like, I've been really intentional about not making this a book club because I'm not saying, like, hey, we're on this timeline for reading. But, like, if you need a resource to find books, here's a very, like, categorized reading list that you can go to. And so I try to think of like what would I like to expose people to while I'm exposing myself at the same time. So I guess not really a mood reader. And it does get a little bit, challenging because like there's so many books that come out all the time and it's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
where can I slot this in? And so I am very flexible and I'm really not reading things outside of my list every month because I just don't have time to be reading a whole, like it's 4 books a month, and I personally, that's all I have to give. So I try to get like creative and flexible, like where I'm sliding things in if there's another book that comes out. And I also like I said, I have it planned out for the year, but I'm not. I mean, only I know what's planned out for the year. So I switch things when necessary. But yeah, so I've been very meticulous about the schedule for
Yeah.
2024.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So, are you finishing? Like, if we look back at, what are we in? If we look back at April, did you,
Mhm.
all of the books that you said, like, that you wanted to read with an exception of, I guess, 7 Days in June, if you DNF that?
No, so actually, so in 2023, when I first launched this, I was very strict with myself about making sure you finish every single thing that is on a book list. And it started to almost become a toxic
Mm,
relationship with reading
mm-hmm.
because it's like it's starting to feel more so like I need to get through these books than I actually need to experience these books. Books that I've chosen because I want to read, but now I'm making it not enjoyable because I'm not even giving myself the proper space to read them. Because I mean, I work a full time job, I have, other things going on, so I can't always get through all of them. And so now I think it puts a little bit more responsibility on me as far as like what I do leading up to putting out these lists. Because I don't want to put out books where it's like I don't feel comfortable, that it's at least I mean, books, art in general is subjective. Not everybody's gonna like everything. Like I said, I put 7 Days in June on the list and I don't like it. But I make sure it checks like certain boxes as far as like, does it adhere to the theme? Does it, really like represent this community that I'm trying to uplift? Um, I read a lot of reviews and stuff like that, which can also be tricky because I try not to let too many reviews like influence what I want to read. But I'm on Goodreads all the time.
I really like that, and I am very much a mood reader. And sometimes I think for like my Black History Month stack, I was like, and I predominantly have, especially now, like a lot of Black author books.
Hmm.
Once now that I've like really gotten into Bookstagram, and so I was like, oh, this is a perfect month. Like, I'm reading all Black all month. I do it all year anyway for the most part, but this month it's gonna be all Black, and I tried to stick to it for the most part, but there were some where I was just like, this is a good book, but I'm not in the mood for it. Like, I
Yeah,
can tell
some
this is
people.
going to be a great story, and if I force myself to read it, I am not going to give it the credit that it's due. So I'm just going to have to set it aside. Or, there were some heavier books in there, and it was like, I'm not in the mood to read, while a very important story, a heavy story. Like,
Absolutely.
my life is heavy right now. I need something
Exactly.
need something fluffy. So yeah, no, I definitely admire the ability to be able to like put aside and say, I'm going to read these books, or I'm going to, stick within this theme, and really stick to it. It's definitely a skill.
Yeah, I've been, kind of like playing with the balance of it all. At the end of the day, I really see like my platform as like kind of like a curation sort of platform. And so I do read like the majority of everything that I put out, even if it's not in the month that I post it. Because one, I'm buying these books, so I'm
Right.
spending my money. So these they need to get read or swapped or traded or something. But yeah, I've given myself grace for sure because, like you said, like there's seasons that we go through where life is heavy, and like these books that I set out to read actually don't fit with the season of my life right now, or like I just need more time to whatever I need time for. So I try to give myself, and I'm not that much of a speed reader. Like there will be
Mm-hmm.
times where like that's what I'm doing for the day and I'll get through a book, but like I'm also not churning out several books a month. And I feel like, being on Bookstagram or BookTok or whatever, you can kind of feel like a little bit of a pressure to be that. Like when I see people's like monthly wrap ups, I'm like, clutching my chest because I'm like, how? I'm like, y'all said y'all got jobs too, so how are y'all reading so much? I can't do it. But, comparison is a thief of joy. So I just meet myself where I'm at, especially because the entire mission of Read and Noted is to meet people where they're at in their reading journey. So, yes, I have just piles of books all around my house, but they don't all get read in a month. So.
Yes, absolutely. No, I feel you on that. On the, how are y'all reading all these books? I'm and I'm probably, I sit anywhere comfortably between 6 and, on a good month, 10. again, I am a very heavy, half of those are probably audio. So I am a very heavy audio listen, especially if I'm cooking or running errands. Like it's easy to kind of knock through. But yeah, and for me, I have so many books that I want to read, so I feel like I make myself like, I know you're tired, but you're gonna stay up another hour or so to get through this book because like I really want to get to this one too. So that excitement to just want to fit them all in, I think is kind of my driving. But I'm in a season right now that I am busy with work, with clients,
Mhm.
and my reading is definitely slowed. And it's annoying because it's like I just want to I just want to curl up and read this story, but it's also very
Literally.
much life.
Yeah, I tell my friends all the time that I just want like a reading sabbatical. Like just
Yeah.
take a month off of work and I can sit on a beach or at a park or whatever and just get through these books.
Yeah, yeah. That would be
Yeah.
lovely. I wish that would be lovely. So, now kind of bringing in a little bit of that playlist aspect, and I know we talked about a little bit before, I guess some of the books that you're bringing and the vibe, are you are you bringing that together? Are you thinking about these books have this kind of vibe, so I'm going for this kind of vibe playlist? Or is it, again, more of just like your life vibe? And this is what, this is the theme of the month, regardless of the books. I'm looking for music that fits this theme.
Yeah, so all of the playlists currently go with the theme of the books. And so like I said, like I keep on referencing April, but like the malfunctioning moral compass, that playlist, all of the songs like depicted some sort of like internal conflict that the artist had, whether it's Jay-Z, singing about selling drugs or somebody like going back and forth in a relationship. So I've been very intentional about making sure that the same emotions that might come up when reading these books, you can also have through the playlist. And because also I know that like not everybody is going to read the newsletter and pick up all of these books, but it's more likely that they may be able to, listen to the playlist or download the playlist. Like that's a lot, that's a lower lift for a lot of people, but they can still kind of get like a little bit of like, whatever I'm trying to convey through the music. And I think that music is just as much as a storytelling medium, as literature is. And so happy to share that too. But also excited to share another exclusive for you. So June is Black Music Month, and the newsletter will be going bi-weekly. And so instead of just one volume that has the one playlist and the one reading list, the second edition of the newsletter will be solely dedicated to music, and those will be more so like mood music for me, like what I'm listening to right now, what artists I think y'all should like be discovering or like spending time with. So that would be the space for that, because I feel like I'm listening to music 24/7, and so that doesn't all fit into those like very curated themed playlists. So I wanted another space where I could like be more of like a discovery engine for people.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Thanks
Oh,
for giving us, the advanced details. I love that. That's so fun.
I'm
Oh my
excited.
gosh, I'm excited for that. Now that brings up a whole other question of, can you, and I don't want to assume, can you listen to music while you read?
No,
No.
no, no. So I mean, I can listen to like beat tapes or like instrumental type of things, like in low in the background, but I cannot have some lyrics playing while I'm trying to read. Like something's gonna get my attention. Either I'm gonna be listening to the song and it's gonna be messing up what I'm trying to read, or I'm gonna be reading and kind of irritated that somebody's talking in the background or singing in the background. So they're literally just there to mirror each other as far as like content. But I mean, unless you do like to listen to music while you're reading, you can do that. But me personally, I cannot.
No, no. Oh, that's so fascinating. Are you like, so does it has to be, I know you said slow music in the background. Like, can you go to a coffee shop with the noise and the things, or like be out at the park? outdoor reading, like, can you do that, or you need to have like earbuds in, something low playing, but like all the noise cancellation?
So I actually can go to coffee shops and be outside, and I feel like maybe it's just because I have the expectation of noise that I can do that. And like also like when I'm on a plane, I have a very particular playlist that I listen to, which is the Welcome playlist for Read and Noted. If y'all are on Apple Music or Spotify or Tidal, I'm all these places. But that's a collection of like beat tapes and like just very kind of like lo-fi energy music. I can do that. So if I am at a place where it's a bit loud, I'll just put that on, and it's kind of like complimentary, I think, to my reading. But yeah, I don't prefer to read in noisy places, but I mean I can. But at home, I like it to be quiet.
Nice. That's really interesting, and I asked because I think it may have been the way like we grew up, myself and my sister specifically. I don't know how my little brother likes to read, but it is the strangest thing. I can have like SVU playing on the TV, and
Really?
then I can have like a lo-fi or really any type of like slow R&B calm music, even with words, and I can read. And it
Mm.
it is the strangest thing. So growing up, my grandfather used to play the stereo in one room, and he'd have it on full blast because he's in the other room watching TV. And it was crazy because like we grew up with this, and it'd be like, how do you pay attention to both? But now like I find that like I do the same thing. I will literally pop on a game or SVU or something. I'll pop out a book and then start a playlist. And it's like one or the
Mm.
one or the other, but that literally, I don't know, it's comfortable for me, and I can dial in and focus on reading.
See, I'm also a person though, like I can't work with like the TV on.
Oh.
Like I know so many people because I'm remote. So many people have a TV playing all day, and I can't do that because I'll either watch the TV or I'll work. I do have music playing a lot of the time when I'm working, but if I need to lock in again, it's beat tapes and stuff. But now that you said like it's the way that you grew up, I wonder. Like I went to a Montessori school when I was younger. So we always used to have like a thing displayed in the class that would say like what our volume level was. And like you don't want to be over like a yellow. So with a Montessori school, you're supposed to kind of like work on your own, like independently, but the volume in the classroom is supposed to be low. So that's probably why I can't work. Or I mean, I can, but I prefer to work and read when it's quiet. Never really thought about that though.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. That's really interesting. Just I find it fascinating with people who can or can't read, and I know
Mm.
people who just no music at all. Like they can't have anything,
Anything.
not even beats. It needs to be total silence for them to read. So, what is your, I know you spoke of your welcome playlist. We'll do this in two parts. What's like your go to? And then I'll ask you for like specific moods.
So my go-to is always probably gonna be like a little bit like in the neo soul kind of arena. Like if I'm thinking about like what I want to throw on for like cleaning or just like setting the mood at home, I'll probably go to like one of like my neo soul playlists, and like I'm thinking of like Maxwell and like Corinne Bailey Ray and like artists like that. That's also like what I grew up on. Like my mom loved Lettucey, and like that's just like what we heard in the house. She was also a huge Prince fan, so like I
Yeah.
also listened to like a lot of Prince and like um older music. But then also like I grew up in a small town that had like three radio stations, and so one of those radio stations always played like alternative, like you know, soft rock sometimes, or like things like The Fray and Coldplay. So sometimes I'm in the mood to listen to that. I have like Coldplay records also, so it depends. But my go-to is probably in the neo soul arena or like rap. I listen to a lot of hip hop too, so it depends on how I'm feeling.
Yeah, I went to a, I can't even say it's a predominantly white because it was very mixed high school, middle school and high school. But yeah, I was probably like in other areas, like in church and like different organizations outside of school. I was probably the only black kid listening to Fall Out Boy, Panic at the Disco, like,
All
and
of
I'm in
that.
Vegas, so Panic at the Disco was local at that time. So like, you know, watching them come up, and it was like I was the only person, and like even today, like I'll still listen to like Paramore and stuff, and like if someone's in my
Mm-hmm.
car, they'll be like, "What?" And I'm like, "Nah, no, no, no,
Not
it's
too much.
Paramore. You can't. Don't ask questions. It is what it is."
It's always like whenever I like do the CarPlay feature where it's like, "Hey Siri, play some music." I never know what I'm gonna get. Like it's always, and she always shuffles things that doesn't make sense. So you might hear like Paramore next to like Ari Lennox. Well, honestly, those might. I need to play around in a playlist with those two, but Ari Lennox and Paramore and like J Cole, and it's like this makes no sense, but that is what I listen to on a regular. So.
That's what I like. Yeah, 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 absolutely. What's your like go-to like hype music? Like you're in a, it's been a day, you're in a mood or whatever, and you just need something that's gonna like lift your spirits.
So I do these things sometimes called dance breaks. Like if I just need like a bit of energy or I need to like, fake it till I make it sort of thing. And I got that from Grey's Anatomy because like Meredith and Christina used to do that. But
Yes.
I would probably throw on like Kaytranada. I feel like yeah, Kaytranada for sure. I'm like looking back here. I love, love, love Rihanna. I would throw Renaissance on. That was probably my dance break music of 2023 and 2024 was Renaissance, and now we listen to
Agreed.
Cowboy Carter. But yeah, some more like electric kind of sounding like dance music.
Yeah.
Or if I'm in like a get in my zone, focus, I'll put on like Jay Z. Or I'm also like a huge J. Cole fan. I've been to like
Mhm.
7 J. Cole concerts
Oh
starting when
wow.
I was like 13. So love him. Or some good old fashioned gospel music.
That's very nostalgic. Yeah, 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 yeah. I think it's funny, like my sister the other day, I think she saw like a reel or someone or something, and it was like Revolution by Kurt Franklin, and she was like, this song's still like
It's gonna hit every time. The
it's still a
hell?
great song. I'm like, yeah, yeah, you're right. It is. Um, I know we talked a little bit about like you reading a lot of literary, you know, fiction. Is that primarily like your zone? I know you said, you know, you were reading When Crack Was King, which is a nonfiction.
Mhm.
What's like your go-to? Like we talked about like your go-to music. Like what's like that go-to genre on the book side?
I think what probably excites me most, like things that I'm like, oh, I want to automatically put that on my TBR, is historical fiction. I love a good like time driven piece or something that kind of like plays on factual, things that have happened, and kind of like takes it further. I've also been liking speculative fiction a lot and like dabbling a little bit in like magical realism. Yeah, so those are probably like my two favorite, with like historical fiction being like number one, and that's been like that since I was like in middle school.
What are some of your like what are some of like your top, I guess, ones that you've read within like the last year?
In the last year, I would say Symphony of Secrets for
Okay,
sure
yeah.
by Brendan Slocumb. Like I loved, loved, loved that book.
Have you read what's his other one? The Violin Conspiracy?
I actually haven't yet. For me to like love that second book so much, it's crazy that I haven't gone back to read the first. But
Okay, I'm interested to see out of the two then, like which one you're gonna like more. I've read both. I think Symphony of Secrets had more of that historical element that you're talking
mhm,
about
yeah,
discovering from the past, and I really like playing with that notion of like how many forgotten stories, or not even forgotten but uncredited
yeah,
stories, are
hmm
out there that, you know, we have no idea that this famous person is the face, and there was really a person of color behind the actual genius of it.
absolutely. And I think that's why I like the genre so much, is because like it takes what we know and like goes further. And like especially like when it comes to like black stories, black and brown stories, it takes a lot of things that like have been kept from us that we can't know, that we kind of like, you know, we might know from talking with our families and stuff, but there's no one that's really like recovering these stories. And so like being able to like to kind of like make these different periods our own, like what he did with that, I think is really fascinating. I remember like in high school, I read The Gathering of Waters by Bernice L. McFadden, which is it's kind of like magical realism and historical fiction, but it's about Emmett Till and kind of like reimagining like that full story and then also like the generations that came after that in that like small city in the South. And so like that's always been like very fascinating to me, just to like take an expanded peek at something, even if it's not, you know, of course we know like a lot of this is fiction, well most of it is fiction, it's a fiction story, but it just, you know, kind of gets my imagination going. That I read Nickel Boys last year. um a great book, very, you know, a book that really
Emotional.
pulls, yeah, on the heartstrings for
Yeah.
sure, but very well written.
Yeah. Okay. Just curious. I'd be interested once you read the Violin Conspiracy, which one you kind of like more. And the Violin Conspiracy isn't necessarily as historical, but he has flashbacks to his childhood, which of course were
Mhm.
like 60s era. So like there are definitely things going on. But he's a great author. I really enjoy the lane that he's carving out in music and
Yeah,
musician and all of that. They're great stories.
absolutely. Yeah. And I also love like, you know, works of fiction that kind of like expose me to things like that, like, you know, classical music and stuff. I actually played violin and flute when I was younger, but I hated it and I still can't read music. So it was like nice to see like, you know, black characters in that space. And I feel like I always like learn a little bit more about like, I don't know, like cars and stuff when reading like
Yeah.
Blacktop Wasteland, like from
Yeah.
S.A. Cosby. Although I thought it was a little bit too much car talk in that book. I don't care anything about cars, but
I
I'm always.
haven't read that one.
Oh, have you read any of his books?
So
S.A.
I've read Razorblade Tears,
Mm-hmm.
which, with a name like Razorblade Tears, I should have just guessed in the subject nature of the book. But like I think like by a couple of chapters in, like I already had tear stains in the book because I was like, I just like this is sad. This is
Yeah.
emotional. But yet he took that and it was also like I think my notes were all over the place. Were like, but I'm also getting like not gore, but
Yeah.
like like that violence that I
It was
see
very
in
great.
fantasies. Like it was just it was
Yeah.
interesting.
I kind of went into Blacktop Wasteland blind, like not knowing anything about the author. Um, I don't even know why I picked that book up. But anyway, the grittiness and just like violence of his writing really took me off guard. Like I can't really think of anything else that I've read that is as like knuckle to knuckle like that.
Yeah.
So I definitely know what you mean because he writes in a way where you can almost like feel what's being like
Yeah.
happening. So there's like some like getting stumped out scenes and I'm like,
Yeah.
it's a bit, yeah.
Very descriptive. I mean, and it's great writing, but it's
Good.
yeah, you're right. Wasn't like where did that come from? I thought you guys were investigating who
Right.
killed your sons. Like,
I lost
what's
teeth.
happening? The last kind of point that I wanted to talk about here before we get into recommendations and like our final round is online, on your Instagram specifically. You call yourself the literary hype girl. Can you tell us a little bit more about like where that came from, what that means, how you feel about it, like just all of the things?
Yes. So I am a person who really appreciates a good play on words. I'm probably a writer before anything else. And so when I was trying to think of like, you know, taglines or how to really explain what I'm trying to do with Red Noted, Lit Hype Girl like first came to mind and then like literature, of course. And so yeah, I think that once I had that, I was like, oh, let's make it literary because it's a literary newsletter. But the whole hype girl thing is so like read and noted to me, like I said, it's a love letter to music, to literature, but it's also meant to be like a resource for people no matter what stage, like in their reading journey that they're in. I have wanted it to be very loose and not as, structured as a book club. Like, I'm not saying, like, hey, read this book, by this certain date and we'll discuss it. I just every month I'm like, here are or here's a list of books that I'm reading. You can join and read them too. You can pick one book out of this, you whatever. I'm hyping you up regardless. If you want to come back to the newsletter or come back to my Instagram and like look at these books that I've curated, like whatever makes sense for you, I am championing because I think that everyone just needs to read more. I think that everyone needs to read more fiction because I think that like fiction more than anything really like helps us build empathy. And so I am just trying to meet people where they're at and like be their hype girl in this like literature space. And then of course, hype man, hype girl lends very well to music, and that's also like the second part of Read and Noted. And so that's where that came from. And Read and Noted in general came from like I said, I've been reading like pretty much all my life, all reading all of my life, and I used to post what I was reading on my personal Instagram. So I would always post just like a picture of the book after I read it, how many stars, and like some keynotes just on my story. Like that, this is what I like to do. And people would always DM me and ask, like, hey, do you have like a list that you keep anywhere? Or do you have like an Amazon wish list? Or are you going to start a book club? Or you blah, blah, blah. And so after enough of that, I was like, well, I actually don't want to start a book club, but I do have my own list that I keep in my notes app. And so maybe I can like make something out of that. And I had set a goal in 2023 to write more. And I was originally going to like write essays. I wanted to like write one essay a quarter just to kind of like, strengthen my writing gene because I don't write that much anymore. But I was like, you know what? I could like do a newsletter. Like that can kind of like satisfy both things of like kind of wanting to explore this like book list, book recommendations that people have been asking me for. But then also I can use this newsletter to dip my toe back into writing, semi long form. So that was how Red Noted was born.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love it. I love it. Now, follow-up questions here.
Mm-hmm.
So with the, they don't have to read with you, but you can if you want to. Like, what is that? Like, are you encouraging people to come on over to your stories, to your grid, to email you back? Like, do you have like a community that's actively doing that?
Yeah, so I actually like Bookstagram is so interesting to me because it really does feel like a real community space
Mm-hmm.
more than like really any other kind of like I don't know, like passion group, I guess, that I've seen on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram. Because once upon a time, I also had a food blog. Not me cooking, because I hate cooking, but me going out for food. And the community that I've built in like this short amount of time with the Bookstagram has far surpassed like what I was building with the food blog, which I have now shuttered. But so I don't actually have like a forum or um like a set place at this moment where I am like facilitating any sort of like follow up other than like like the comments on posts and stuff, but it is on the pipeline this year to like have a website where I can like facilitate more of that like actual community, because I do want to like continue to like nurture like my subscribership and stuff with the newsletter, and like also just like kind of build this into a brand because that is ultimately what I want to do. Like,
Right.
I want it to mean as much to people that Red Noted stamped a book as like Reese Witherspoon. So I have
Yeah.
like a lot of big ideas, and I just
Oh
have to
my
like
God.
sit down and get them, executed. But
That's so awesome.
yeah, thank you.
Oh, I love that. I'm all for, like business ventures. And then especially, for some of these passion projects, or even if they say a passion project, but just funneling and pushing it more on a
Mhm.
larger scale, because again, you're introducing audiences to books that they may not, a lot of the books that you're suggesting are books that I've never had on my radar. So I just love how, I agree, I love how the community is so different but also very supportive,
Absolutely.
of other creators.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think like the fact that I actually like just really enjoy doing this, I feel like really speaks to me. Like, when I think about like purpose and like being in alignment with like what I'm doing, like it just feels like it makes sense for me. This is something that I would be doing anyway, whether it was like me sharing on like my personal stories or chatting with people, because I always give people unsolicited book recommendations. So it's like I'm kind of doing this anyway. And also, I love writing, and I don't write as much in my day job. So it's like I'm just like putting together things that already kind of like naturally make sense to me and trying to package them for other people. And I enjoy it. So I want to continue nurturing that and see where it goes.
Yes, 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 yes. I love it. In any way, we're all here to support. So
Absolutely. Thank
just,
you.
yeah, guys, again, make sure you go give a follow and subscribe to the newsletter. The link will definitely be in the show note, but we're kind of coming down on it, on time. So I just wanted to ask if you had a couple of book recommendations that you wanted to give people, things that you think, you want to see people read more of or give a try to, something that you wish had more hype.
I would definitely say to check out The Gathering of Waters by Bernice McFadden. That was probably like one of my first like introductions to like magical realism, and I think that it's really special that it centers black history and like really like humanizes like what happened to Emmett Till and what those type of traumas do to generations to come. So that is always like one of the first books that pop into my head when I think of like favorite books, even though I read it like probably more than 15 years ago. I also, this year, I read Wildflower by Aurora James. That's a really good memoir. I have been like telling all my friends to read, especially if you want to learn more about like slow fashion and how we can be like really conscious of like consumerism and like how these big businesses kind of affect like countries outside of like where we just live. So I definitely recommend that. And then of course, When Crack Was King. I have been like trying to hustle that book to everybody in the past couple weeks. So those are my top three right now. Oh, Rest is Resistance. That was my 2023 trying to hustle to everybody. I That really changed my relationship with rest and like with productivity guilt, which I think is something that minorities struggle a lot with. So it's written a lot like a manifesto, which can like be a little, it's a different style of writing to get into, but I think it's a very important message. So Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look into that one. Yeah, I have a very difficult and interesting relationship with rest. Always feeling like I have to be productive, like, because if not, then I'm wasting my time. Like, what do you
Exactly.
mean take a day off? Like, who has time for that? So I'm gonna have to add that one closer on the top of the list to my TBR. Definitely. And I wanted to tell you, if you liked, you loved Crack Was King, you may want to check out, if you haven't already, How the Word Is Passed by Clint Smith. Have you heard of that one?
No, I
And
don't.
that was one of my top books and one of my top nonfictions last year, right up alongside When Crack Was King and Biting the Hand. That one, he is going to different national landmarks, Monticello, Angola Prison,
Mm.
Bedford Cemetery, which is where like the last like Confederate soldiers are buried. And he's going on these tours to see how are you guys telling people about American history? Is it factual? Is it truthful? Are you glazing over the difficult parts, and then he's talking to the tour guides. How do you feel about it? Do you feel like it needs to be deeper when you're talking to the people who are coming on these tours? Do you feel like they're listening? Are they receptive to what you're saying? And then he starts talking to the people on the tours. Why did you come to visit Angola prison? Like, what is in this for you, and what are you hoping to learn? And he, especially for that one, he talks about how weird it is to, again, to see Angola prison, and then like there's a gift shop. Like, it was just like, I don't know how I feel about this. So
Yeah,
it's a really, really fascinating read.
that sounds fascinating. What's the title?
How the Word Is Passed by
Oh, the
Clint
word
Smith.
is passed. Okay, I'll definitely have to add that to my list. That sounds up my alley.
Yeah, that one was, and I listened to it on audio for both of them. That one and When Crack Was King is literally, they were back to back reads, and I was about an hour into both of them, one after the other, and was like, "Yep, automatic buy." Like, automatic buy for this one too.
Love that.
They were phenomenal.
Love when it hits right off the bat.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay, so we're moving into our final round called There's a Book for That. So
Mhm.
I will basically just ask you rapid fire some questions, and you hit us with the first book that comes to mind. Are you ready?
I hope so.
Okay, here we go. The first one is, might not be as easy as I thought it was going to be, but a book that you've had on your TBR for over a year.
Ooh, so many books. I have had The God of Good Looks on my TBR for over a year. It came out last year, but I've had it on my TBR since it was even like announced, and I
What
haven't
is
read
that one about? I haven't heard of that.
it. It centers like the Caribbean community. Can't think of who exactly, but that's been on my TBR for a long time.
Okay, okay, okay. A book that you're hoping to get to soon.
I'm hoping to get through all four of my books this list, and I really want to read The Memory Police. I can't think of the author right now, but it's like a dystopian sort of book where basically like your memories are policed, and
Ooh.
things around you are like taken away, and then you don't have any memory of them anymore. And
Mm.
so I'm really like looking forward to getting into that. I really do like dystopian and like speculative fiction, so very curious to see how that unravels.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. I'm gonna have to look that one up. If you had to pick one, your favorite book this year.
When Crack Was King was my favorite read so far this year, with Kennedy Ryan's latest being the second. This Could Be Us, yes. I liked that book a lot, but When Crack Was King is my favorite so far
Is
this
your
year.
favorite? Got it. A book that took you by surprise.
Probably Hold My Girl by Charlene Carr. I haven't read a lot about like um IVF and like what those communities look like and what those experiences are for people who like have had failed IVF journeys, for people that, go through if it have a successful experience. And like I won't like spoil that book, but like the twists in it, like what those two ladies' experiences were very just kind of like eye-opening for me. Um and I don't think I was expecting to like feel like I was reading into a whole new world. Like with there being like so much community and like, things around people that have like infertility challenges. So that was like a interesting book for me to read.
Is that one? It sounds fiction. It's fiction.
Mhm. Yeah, it's fiction.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, interesting, interesting, interesting. Okay. So kind of right along that same lane, a book that made you cry or emotional. I don't know. Are you a crier when you read?
Not that much, even though I am kind of sort of a crybaby. A lot when I'm like watching movies, but I think there's a book. What's it called? Three Girls from Brownsville, I think is what it's called, and it's about two sisters, and then one girl who like grew up like a sister in Chicago, but like they have like just very different lives, and it was just kind of emotional, like how some of their lives panned out, and how so much of your environment really affects like who you become. especially like when you think of like, kids who can't control their environment. So I definitely feel like I got teary eyed with that one. And that is nonfiction. Also written by a journalist, Dawn Richards, I think is her last name, but great book, Three Girls from Bronzeville.
Nice, 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 nice. Okay. A book that you wished more people would read.
I really liked Black Thought's memoir that came out earlier this year, The Upcycled Self. I really liked the idea of like upcycling yourself, and it was a pretty short, easy read. And I think that I haven't seen a lot of people talk about it, but I think it would be very helpful for folks just to think about like how they can upcycle things that have happened to them, or how they can like make things new. I just like the concept of upcycling in general, like when I think about like sustainability and stuff. So I feel like everyone should like, pick that book up and like kind of like apply it to their own lives. And the
Ooh.
psychology of money. I actually don't think of myself as like a finance reader, but I could read more finance books, and I think that people should read that book. It was very like a very approachable way um, to like deal, or a very approachable book for like dealing with your money.
Okay. So that the last one that you're saying, the psychology of money, is that more along the lines of like teaching people how to be better with money, or educating people on like capitalism and all of that?
Yeah, I am team eat the rich, but that's more about teaching people how to be better with money.
Okay.
hmm
Okay. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. A book that you loved as a kid or a teen.
Um, well, this is kind of dark, but I really liked Sylvia Plath's book. I can't think of what the name of that book is right now. The like poet and author who like stuck her head in the oven and killed herself.
What?
For some reason, I really liked that book. I guess I was melodramatic as a teen. I'm trying to think of
I
the name.
don't even know what that book is. You said Sylvia Plath?
The Bell Jar. I really liked that book when I was in high school.
Oh my gosh, I've never heard of it. I've never heard of the author either. But now I'm interested.
Yeah, tortured poet. I guess you could think of her as. But I really liked that book, and I feel like I read more cheerful things as a kid, but that's what's coming to my head right now.
It's all good. We all read, depressing and slightly inappropriate things as a kid,
Yeah.
so it's all good. The last book you purchased.
The last book I purchased was Late Bloomers. It's
Okay.
like a family drama, multi-generational book about um, two parents, like from arranged marriage, are finally divorcing after like I think it's 18 or 28 years or something. And so I think it's going to be like an exploration of like, cultural customs and what that does to the family to have like their parents from this kind of like, you know, um, traditional like Indian upbringing get a divorce. So I
Mm.
haven't really read anything about anything like that, so I am intrigued.
And then the last one is a book that made you fall in love with an author.
Symphony of Secrets by Brendan Slocumb. Even though I haven't read The Violin Conspiracy yet, I like sang his praises up and down my page last year because I liked that book so much. I really enjoy him. And then N.K. Jemisin from The
Yeah,
City We Became. I'm a huge fan of hers.
yeah,
Reading
yeah. Have you had a chance to read any of her others?
that. Because she has some short stories, right?
Does she? I have no
I
idea.
believe
I
so.
feel like this lady.
I believe I read like a short story, and then but I haven't read the follow up to
Okay,
The City We Became yet.
okay, okay, okay. Me either. I have it on this huge TBR cart, but I haven't read it. I feel like I've mentioned this on the podcast a couple of times, but I just finished the fifth season
Mm.
by her, and that was, well, maybe not just. I don't know. That may have been March or an April read. I think it was a March read. And that one, so she is the only person who has won a Hugo Award for all three books in her series.
Oh
Yeah.
wow!
So the fifth season is the Broken Earth trilogy, and all three books won a Hugo Award. She's the only person who's ever done that. So it's just, it's so amazing. It's equally as good. I had to kind of, stick with it, kind of like The City We Became. Like, you're just thrown in and you're like, what is happening? You have no idea. Like, there's very little explanation. Like, you just kind of have to pick up the context clues and go. But by the end, I was like, what? Like, order the second one right now. Like, I was sold.
Love that. I'm gonna have to start that series. That's kind of how I
Mhm.
feel about like Octavia Butler, like
Mhm.
amazing author. But like when I read Dawn, for example, I was like, what? Like you have to get through it. Like what is this? It's like so sci-fi. But another author that I love. Um, but yeah, like folks that are like speculative or like magical realism, science fiction or whatever, I'm just like fascinated by how their brains work. Because like, how did you that your imagination is just
How did you come up with it? That's how I feel about N.K. Jemisin. Who would have came up with something like
yeah,
this?
like, and I'm following, and it's like, wow, but like, how did you even have the thought that sparked an entire novel? And
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
world building is something that really fascinates me.
yeah.
Like, have you read A Psalm for the Wild Built?
I haven't. Who is that one
That's
by?
Becky Chambers. I brought it up because of the world
I've
building.
heard that name.
Yeah, she has a few other books. But the world building in that is really just fascinating to me. And it's more of like a utopian book than like a
Mm,
dystopian book. And so it's kind of just thinking like, wow, like you thought of like the best of the best that our world could have been. And then it was so descriptive that it kind of just makes you wish that you did live there. But it's about a robot and like a monk who are like kind of like going
mm,
on a journey together.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've heard of the name, and I definitely, I'm sure I have something from the author on my TBR, but I will definitely, yeah, I love a recommendation, so
Super short
that
book.
gives
Like,
me
yeah, you
a
can read
place
it in
to
one
start.
sitting.
Yeah, nice. Now, hold on. Before we go and before we get into like making sure people know where they can find you, I
Mhm.
have to ask you because you just said like you love this author. A little bit of a hard opinion, guys. Don't come for me. Octavia Butler. I read Parable of the Sower, and I am like the 0.1% that I was like not feeling it. It didn't work for me. I don't know if maybe because it was told in like journal entry style, and I've realized like that doesn't work for me very well. But yeah, I finished the book and I was like, I mean, credit to her for thinking of this and, writing, and like, I get it. Her writing style was good, but I could have cared less about the characters. The time that we were in, and it's so fascinating to me because, like, I read, like, Hunger Games, Divergent, and I'm like, by the end of this, we're all gonna die. Like, there's no way we're all gonna make it out. And so, like, knowing that, like, this isn't, that her book wasn't gonna have a happy ending, I was still like just really annoyed with like everything that was happening. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't really give you a true opinion on that book because I have not finished it.
Okay.
Again, it was one of those things I was like, well, maybe this is not the time for me to read it. Because, like, I respect her
Okay.
so much as an author, and so many people sing the praises of that book. But it wasn't really doing it for me either at the time. So I'm going to have to try that
Okay.
another time. But, like, I've read Kindred, I've read Dawn, and, like, I really do see her kind of as, like, one of the mothers, I feel like, of like really
Hmm.
good like science fiction or like speculative fiction. But yeah,
Okay.
I don't know about the parable of the
Did
soul.
you like Kindred? Because I have that sitting over there too, and I've just been like, I don't know if I'm in the mood for this.
Yeah, and I didn't want to watch the adaptation of it, so I don't think I'm going to. But I loved Kendrick when I read it. I'm like looking at it right
Okay.
now, but I read it like several years ago.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
I've read it. It's been like more than 10 years ago, but I loved it at
Mm,
the time. My mom loved it also at the time. So that was
okay.
my first book of hers that I read, and I was like really fascinated by like the magicalness of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
Okay.
also,
Okay.
yeah, I feel like you have to be in the mood for it if you want to be like time jumping from slavery and
Yeah.
whatnot. So
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I'll give that a try. You said it, so I was like, oh well, let's see here.
I feel
That's
it.
me. Yeah. Awesome. Well, if you want to just tell everyone where we can connect with you more, all of the places online, and of course, I'll have all of the links in the show note as well.
Absolutely. Well, I am mainly on Instagram, so it is Red Noted. It is pronounced Red Noted, not Read Noted, as I have noticed that everybody thinks it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, Red Noted on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok under the same handle. I'm not super active there, but it does exist. And then, of course, I'll leave you with the link to subscribe to my newsletter. But I put out monthly reading lists and playlists, and also just like, odd musings and listicles from me. So that can hit your inbox every month if you subscribe. And then starting June, it can hit your inbox twice a month because we'll also have that second edition that's more focused on music. So super excited to have any and everyone join the fold.
Okay, guys, well, that is all from us today. Please make sure you check the links in the show note. Go support, go sign up. And until next time, we'll talk to you later. Bye.
For having me. Bye.
Hey there, one last thing before you leave. Are you looking for a group to read and chat about books with? I'd love to invite you to join us on our current buddy read of The Color of Law, A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America by Richard Rothstein. We'll be having 2 virtual meetups to discuss this book. Our first discussion, where we'll be covering the first half of the book, will be on Sunday, June 23rd. All of the details, including the link to join our monthly book thread, can be found on the Geneva app, which you can access by clicking the link in the show note. Quick reminder, all books mentioned in this episode can also be found in the show note. Thanks so much for joining us on today's episode and wishing you a wonderful reading adventure until we meet again. Chat soon.